Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of What Do You Think? My name is Bill Morse, and as you may know, this is a call-in program, so later on, if you would like to ask a question or contribute, please use the information at the bottom of the screen that will appear shortly. I want to first wish, or I hope that everyone has had a good couple of weeks. We have been out of town and taking care of some family business. And I want to wish all veterans today on Thursday, November 11th, Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. I want to thank you all for your service. I want to thank all those who continue to serve regardless of where you are, regardless of what you do. Our sovereignty, our independence as a nation rides on your shoulders. And we've been lucky enough for you to have large shoes to fill. And I hope that will always be the case. We need to appreciate our military. And with that in mind, I just want to remind you that over the last 20 years, in our latest military engagement, we lost 2,430 military personnel in Afghanistan. These are killed in action. We had 1,646 soldiers come back as amputees from mine activity, mine explosions. Sometimes they did not have the right equipment that was armored through a roadside bomb, for example. And I'd like to quote former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld under George Bush Jr., who said, "You fight a war with what you have." As far as I know, he never served. He was not a veteran, but he felt that our service people had enough to work with to deal with chasing terrorists and winning local support in Afghanistan. I also want to add that besides the 2,430 dead, the 1,645 amputees, we also had over 22,000 wounded come back from Afghanistan over the last 20 years. We were involved in Afghanistan after 9/11. The object or the goal was to, the purpose or the mission was to stamp out beds of terrorism that were threatening the United States. So I think you can form your own opinion. In certain respects, I'm sure we have been a more secure country. In other respects, I think that we had been following a rather ill-conceived plan that actually went through 4 different presidents. So hopefully we do not repeat this experience again. It was not exactly the same scale as Vietnam, where we lost 50,000 people and over, I'd say, 1,000 POWs that were never brought back. But there are many similarities between our experience in Vietnam and our more recent experience in Afghanistan. So I just want to offer a prayer. I hope you'll join me for the people that never came back, for their families and friends, for those that came back with trauma, either physical or also at the same time emotional. And we pray for their healing on today, Thursday, November 11th, Veterans Day. So part of my time away was spent in Philadelphia. My co-producer still has her home in Philadelphia, a row house. And so I spent some time there between Philadelphia, maybe once a month, and Bellows Falls. And I thought it would be interesting also to look at two different approaches to dealing with drug abuse. Drug abuse, as long as I can remember, has been an issue in this country. The war on drugs, in my opinion, has been a fiasco. I know it from a personal experience. As in the Navy, I was involved with counter-narcotics missions in the Caribbean, and not tasked with trying to stem the flow of illegal drugs up from the south. But unfortunately, we have not been very successful in dealing with the demand. The demand seems to be very high, especially nowadays with pain pills, fentanyl, opiates. If you watch mainstream television, you'll notice even online that many commercials are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, drug companies, telling you to ask your doctor about this or that. And it shows invariably happy people smiling, enjoying outdoor activities, and they're generally not people that resemble your neighbors. At least they don't resemble my neighbors or many of the people that I run across. And so, or you might watch a news broadcast and find out that the news broadcast has been sponsored by a pharmaceutical. So that's a filter in itself. And this is a discussion for another evening, but I really think that the bear in the house or the elephant in the room that is ignored or seen through rose-covered glasses has been drug abuse, painkiller abuse, and that we, as a society, an American society, have come to rely on drugs on a very dangerous and smooth-sloped, slippery hill, and I worry. So I thought, since it was Veterans Day and that our last engagement has been largely in Afghanistan, that we would look at the Taliban and how the Taliban has been dealing with drug abuse. You may remember that in a previous broadcast, it sounds archaic nowadays, previous video or transmission, we went over the history of foreign involvement in Afghanistan. Some of us are old enough to remember when the Soviet Union was involved in Afghanistan from roughly the late 70s to the late 80s, and how consequently they had their butts kicked, and they were unable to secure the country because of the topography and their lack of understanding the local culture. Interesting to note that 60% of Afghanistan is actually 5,000 feet or higher. It's a mountainous country. It's very difficult to go from A to B. It has provincial capitals that would rival in size, let's say, Hartford, Connecticut, Springfield, or Worcester, Albany. But that there are very, very large distances between these provincial capitals. And so the Russians or the Soviets left in '89, tail between their legs. The Taliban, which was originally a student movement out of nearby Pakistan. Pakistan is on the eastern side. No, correction. Pakistan is on the western side of Afghanistan. The Taliban wanted I'm going to say religious, but I'm going to say also spiritually centered government movement, a religious government, a theocracy, I guess you would call it. And with certain laws, the laws resemble Sharia laws, which many people in our country would see as undemocratic and sexist, as they favor more the man in traditional roles that have lasted thousands of years. And so the Taliban took over, filled the gap once the Soviets left in the early 90s. And the Taliban was in charge up until roughly shortly after 9/11, when we had the attacks on our country. During those during the 90s era, the Taliban was successful in curbing heroin production through the poppy fields and bringing the drug consumption and drug trafficking almost to a halt. They were rather successful. They had the backing of the country people. Now, we came in ourselves, I guess, around 2002, and we successfully rooted out the Taliban, because they were also seen as sponsoring terrorism in our politicians' eyes. And so the production of poppies or heroin was resumed in the early 2000s. And so now we're seeing a replay. Now it's 2021. We have left with our tails between our legs, the country of Afghanistan. We not only left, but we left behind about $87 billion worth of military equipment. And the Taliban has set about, in the provincial capitals, of forcibly taking drug addicts, and there are roughly 3.5 million drug addicts currently in Afghanistan, if my information is correct. The Taliban sees this as a threat to their society, a threat to their stability, a draining of the male's role in society, because most of these drug addicts are males, are men, young men. And so they're trying to eradicate it by forcing drug addicts into withdrawal. That means cold turkey. They are forced, isolated, to withdraw from these drugs that they have been addicted to for years, many of them, and to come clean, and then become more active, responsible citizens under a Taliban regime. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw a video on YouTube from the AGC news agency. I believe it's not in the United States. It's a foreign news agency. Anyway, if you go online, you will see various videos from not only the AGC agency, and I'm probably screwing up the initials, but also an agency, news agency in France, and a few others, reporting on how the Taliban is dealing with the drug addiction problem that they inherited once once we left the country. So it's about 3 minutes. It's it's difficult to watch because this is something that most of us do not experience, hopefully. The effect of a life's dependency on drugs and what that can do to the human body, never mind the human spirit. So if we could see that first 3-minute video of the Taliban dealing with drug addicts in Afghanistan and Kabul, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
دیگه همین شیشه گنده که مردم بیادر ما را سرش گیر کرده با والله با بالله با هر شو از این قسم نزدیم.
بودار شیشه وقتی که چیزی ما به فضل خدا اینا یک ماه شد پاک هستیم همیشه کار میکنیم درمان نشفه خانه خوش هستیم از دکتر صاحبا از اینا از کلشون همیشه نان یو میته کل چیز میته همیشه خورده خو هستیم دیگه تا 45 روز به امر پروردگار بیخی جور میشیم تایید میشیم میریم طرف خانه خود طرف کار بار خود سر حال اولاد خود
کمک کنند تا ما بتانیم که تقریبا بر شما معلوم است که ما در حدود 3.5 میلیون سوی مصرف کننده مواد مخدر از هر دو جنس داریم و یک نوع ارقام تکان دهنده است متاسفانه در سطح افغانستان و در سطح جهان. اگر ما را و امارت و وزارت صحت ما را اینا کمک کنند ما میتونیم بیشتر از این و عرضه خدمات و خوب شدن و صحتمند شدن این معتادین یا سوی مصرف کننده مواد مخدر داشته باشیم.
So as you can see, it's an initial step. Obviously, if you know someone who's tried to recover from drug addiction, it takes more than a 45-day period of detoxification to be successful on a lifelong basis. But this is at least a first step. When the Afghan military and the American military, as well as the UN forces that had been stationed in Afghanistan, left, the Taliban used some of those facilities for civilian purposes, and one of those purposes is rehabilitation of drug addicts. So, as I said, it's too early to say if their efforts will be successful. Again, 45 days of detox is just an initial first step. There is no guarantee for success. There will actually, the odds are there is no success unless there's a follow-up program that the person, the ex-addict, actively remains involved with. I would be willing to bet that the Taliban in most cases will be successful based on their track record of eradicating drug abuse through what I would call a bit of hard love and some smacking around in the 90s. And I am confident that they will have the wherewithal and the strength and the backing of the local population to deal with the drug lords who are still in Afghanistan or overseas, and that would rather see the Taliban fail in eradicating drug use or drug abuse in Afghanistan, Kabul and the provincial cities. What you saw were people that live under a bridge, kind of like an opium den, the opium dens that existed in China. China had a large opium problem, and one of the things that the communists were successful in doing was largely eradicating through programs and just outright liquidation of dealers and people who were profiting from this misery. So now, next video is more closer to home. There are fortunately more channels on YouTube that are picking up and showing footage of an area of Philadelphia in north central Philadelphia called Kensington. You're going to see that this footage was taken on a busy commercial street under an elevated train. You'll see the SEPTA, or Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, station for Frankfurt, the Frankfurt line right there. Again, this is Kensington, which is a neighborhood in north central Philadelphia. We're talking roughly, I'd say, maybe a 6 square block area. It's commercial, obviously, under the elevated train. Around the station is all commercial, restaurants and small shops. There are no chains. These are small business owners. And then off from the main drag, so to speak, you'll see row houses where people live. And I'm going to let this run for 10 minutes. I credit and I thank Kim Gary for this video. Kim Gary has been filming this open drug market activity in Kensington for the last 3 years. This situation has been allowed to exist for at least 5 years, roughly since Mayor James or Jim Kenney, Kenney, assumed office. He was a former city councilman. And the district attorney, who is interested in reform, his name is Krasner, Krasner. What you're about to see, I would, in my opinion, squarely lay on their shoulders as a situation that is reminiscent of a Halloween movie, a horror movie, or a zombie movie. But I'll let you judge for yourself, and the imagery will be much more effective than me talking. So if we could see the second video, please. Again, this is Kensington, Philadelphia. Okay, I think that's enough. Again, if you're tuning into the program a little bit late, my name is Bill Morse. The program is called What Do You Think? This is a call-in program. Earlier, we looked at how the Taliban is dealing with drug addicts, and as a comparison, I thought you would be interested to see how the city of Philadelphia is dealing with drug addicts. And there are other Philadelphias in our country, other large cities that have a similar problem. You're welcome to call in with your thoughts or observations. As I was watching this, yet again, a couple of things came to my mind. Or the first thing that came to my mind was the people that are, they almost look like they're doing aerobics or some type of yoga. They're not doing yoga, they're not doing aerobics. Are mostly young, I would say younger than 30 years of age. They cross racial lines, although most of them are white. This is not a problem for one racial group. It is a problem for obviously more younger people. You also saw police there in a number of the clips. What happens is invariably when you're dealing with drug activity and open drug market where people not only purchase but they use the drugs on the spot, you're going to have fights, assaults, thefts. People do get killed there on the sidewalk. You'll find blood on the sidewalk, and hence the police come and clean up or record the mess. I don't think they solve very many crimes. They just go there as a formality to fill out forms, to record what happened, and an ambulance comes and takes the person away. Most of these people are from Philadelphia. There are people from the suburbs. Generally, they either take the train, which you saw there, the train station for the elevated, or they drive. And I watched another video where, again, courtesy of Kim Gary, K-I-M, Kim as in Kimberly, and Gary, G-A-R-Y. Kim Gary, if you go on YouTube, Kensington, Philadelphia, Kim Gary channel. He or they come by, I'd say, once every couple of weeks and film. And invariably, it's the same scenario unless the weather is very bad. But even if the weather is bad, raining or snowing, people are still out there because they need the fix. And so people will drive up if they're new or they don't know someone to make a connection with. They'll ask who has the works, who's got works. Works being not only the drug, but the needles, the pipes, whatever you need to ingest or put that stuff into your system for the high that you crave. Again, you're welcome to call with your thoughts on this. It's glaringly obvious to me that there are a number of approaches, but in my mind, my opinion, and you may disagree, one approach works, the other approach just kicks the can down the road. The Taliban, as a first step, is a little bit more proactive. The Philadelphia mayor, Mayor Jim Kinney, and the district attorney, I believe his name is Ed Krasner, basically have a laissez-faire or leave it alone as long as they don't bother people. They don't bother people because, as you saw, most of the shops are closed. You saw the metal gates down. A couple of stores or a couple of restaurants were open, but I'm not sure what type of foot traffic you're going to bring in when there are 100 people on the sidewalk doing calisthenics. You don't know who is armed. You don't know how people who are withdrawing or getting high, how they'll react to your presence. I found it interesting that in the videos that I've seen from Kim Gary, that no one notices the camera. No one pays attention to the fact that they're being filmed. And I'm sure some of their friends and relatives have seen them in these videos. And it's got to be very tough. So my question this evening is what, not only what should the mayor and district attorney be doing, but how should we focus on this issue as a nation, because clearly it's not just Kensington, Philadelphia. We are in a very rural state. I'm sure, though, that if you went to Burlington or some of the other, or Rutland, you would see people doing something similar under a bridge, not necessarily out in the open. Certainly, if you go to Troy or Albany to the west, or Manchester to the east, or go down south into Massachusetts, you will also see people that are strung out, either looking for painkillers or some type of narcotic that their system has become addicted to. So, just keep that in mind. It's this has been a cancer in our country for the last 40, 50 years, more so. But when I see young people that probably started taking drugs in high school or earlier, and then I see where they are now, living in zombie land, and that there is no help for them. Unless it's a trip to the morgue or perhaps a trip to jail after some incident, but only after an incident. Give it some thought. They often say that we as a society, any society is judged by its most vulnerable population. Granted, people made a choice to take drugs and to become addicted, knowing full well the risks they were incurring by making that first fatal step. But how we deal with them after they've made that mistake, I think it's indicative of where we stand morally as a society. And if you look at this one area of American society, Kensington, Philadelphia, or a neighborhood in any other city or large town, you can see that we're not the society that we profess to be. We're not the society that we would like to view ourselves to be. The answer, in my opinion, would be some form of, and this is going to take many, many beds and many, many workers, and it'll take billions of dollars, but some type of forced withdrawal and rehabilitation that would span years, not 45 days, but years. I think we should make at least an attempt, instead of letting people just sit out there and eventually die in their misery. Whether they understand or realize what's happening to them or not, we are the ones that are not high. We are the ones that are straight. We are the ones that see what is happening, and therefore we are the ones that either deal with this or let it fester and grow into more areas of our society, claiming the lives of even more young people. So I'm going to leave you with that tonight. My hat's off to the Taliban in this instance for wanting to rid its society of drug-dependent citizens, returning them to a normal, productive life where they are a part of the community. And I would appeal to the mayors, in this case, Mayor Jim Kinney, the DAs, the councilmen responsible not only for that area but other areas, to do something, to come together and be bold in procuring the resources, the beds, the counseling, the opportunities that and patience that's going to be required to get these people off the street. And I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you for watching. It's not an easy thing to watch, but it's in our backyard and it's spreading. And up till now, it's been largely ignored. Have a good rest of the Veterans Day, a good evening. Tomorrow we're going to have rain, so I hope you've enjoyed the last 10 days of sunshine. And we'll be on again next week, Thursday, from 5:45 to roughly 6:30. Take care and God bless.